The fog was thick, almost like milk floating through the trees. Jack had been walking for hours, his boots sinking into the soft alien soil of planet Trevorus. He had come here for research alone with just his bag, scanner, and survival gear. The jungle around him was quiet, too quiet. No birds, no rustling, not even wind. Only silence, until it came, a scream, high-pitched and painful, sliced through the air. Jack froze in place. His breath caught in his chest. It didn't sound like an animal. It sounded like someone in pain, someone crying for help. He looked around, but the fog hid everything beyond a few feet. He should have turned back, returned to his camp, reported the sound later. But something deep inside him said no. Someone was in trouble. And he couldn't ignore that. Jack adjusted his pack and followed the sound. The scream came again, louder this time, and then faded. He moved quickly but carefully, pushing branches aside, watching the ground for traps or strange plants. Planet Trevorus was wild and unexplored in many places. And the tribes here were not friendly. He had heard stories, hunters going missing, strange rituals in the deep forest. He didn't believe them until now. After 15 minutes, the fog began to glow. It wasn't daylight, it was fire, flickering through the trees. He crouched low and crawled behind a fallen tree, heart pounding in his chest. Through the gaps he saw them, figures dancing around a fire, their bodies painted with black ash and red symbols. Long limbs, rough skin, and masks made of bone. Tribal aliens, chanting in a language Jack didn't understand, and above the fire, turning slowly on a wooden spit, was a girl. Jack's stomach twisted. She wasn't food, not yet, but she was tied up and being roasted like one. Her silver skin shimmered in the firelight. Her eyes half closed, face stained with tears and soot. Her hands and feet were bound tightly, and her body trembled from the heat. She screamed again, weaker this time, and it made Jack's hands curl into fists. He scanned the area, counting the alien 6 visible. Maybe more in the shadows. He didn't have a weapon strong enough to fight them all. But he couldn't walk away either. This girl, whoever she was alive. And she was suffering. He had to do something. Jack quietly backed away, searching the forest floor. He found a cluster of green fruit, round and heavy, used by locals as fire starters. They were unstable when overripe. Jack had seen one explode before. He took 3, tied them with a strip from his shirt, and crept around the camp's edge. Closer now, he could see the girl's eyes flickering toward the fire, her lips moving silently. Was she praying or saying goodbye? He threw the fruit bomb into the flames, and the blast was instant. Boom! The fire exploded, sending ash and sparks into the air. The tribesmen screamed, stumbling back in confusion. Jack didn't wait. He rushed forward through the smoke, pulled out his survival knife, and sliced the ropes around the girl's wrists and ankles. She fell into his arms, too weak to stand. But her eyes met his, wide with shock and hope. He held her close and whispered, "I've got you. We're getting out." The tribes began to recover, roaring with anger, some grabbing spears, others rushing toward Jack. He ran, carrying the girl in his arms, dodging trees, slipping on mud, pushing through vines. Branches cut his face. His legs burned with each step, but he didn't stop. Behind him, the howls of the tribe echoed through the jungle. They were coming, and they were fast, but Jack didn't look back. He focused on the girl in his arms, her breath shallow but steady. She wasn't heavy, but she was cold, and her skin felt strange, soft but pulsing with faint energy. He didn't care what species she was, or why they wanted to cook her. She was alive, and he wasn't going to let them take her again. He just needed to find shelter or a place to hide, because the jungle was not going to protect them. It was only the beginning. Jack's heart pounded in his chest as he crashed through thick vines. Branches slapped his arms, and mud splashed his legs, but he didn't slow down. The girl in his arms was barely conscious, her skin hot from the fire, her breath shallow. She clung to him weakly, eyes half open, silver hair tangled and singed. Behind them, deep roars echoed through the jungle. The tribal aliens were hunting them, and they were angry. Jack didn't know who she was, what species she belonged to, or why the tribe was grilling her alive, but none of that mattered now. She needed help, and he needed to survive long enough to give it to her. He ducked under a hanging root, then stopped beside a thick boulder to catch his breath. He placed the girl gently on a patch of moss and scanned the jungle. The mist was clearing now, but he could still hear movement behind him, fast feet on wet leaves. They had only minutes, maybe less. He looked down at the girl. Her silver skin shimmered faintly in the dim light, her eyes flickering open just a little. She looked scared, but not of him. "Stay with me," he whispered, tearing off a piece of his sleeve to wrap a burn on her arm. Her lips moved, barely a sound came out, just one word, N-N-A-I ... Was it a name? A warning? Jack couldn't tell. He gently picked her up again and moved deeper into the jungle. But this time he wasn't just running. He was looking for shelter, for a hiding place, anything. The trees thickened, the path narrowed, and then suddenly he saw it. A slope led down to a dry riverbed, and beside it, a half-collapsed structure made of stone and root. An old ruin, maybe ancient, maybe tribal, but it was cover. He rushed down and ducked inside, laying the girl in a corner where moonlight peeked through a crack. Jack sat beside her, wiping the sweat from his face. She stared up at the ceiling, then turned to him slowly. She raised a weak hand to her chest and pointed. Then she pointed at him. Jack furrowed his brow, confused. "What? You ... me?" he asked gently. She blinked once, then tried to sit up. Her body trembled, and she collapsed into his arms again. Jack held her steady and whispered, "Don't move, just rest." Suddenly, her back twitched, and her whole body glowed faintly blue. Jack gasped, pulling back slightly, but her eyes were still calm. It wasn't a threat. Her body seemed to respond to stress by releasing some kind of light energy. He looked closer, and for the first time, he noticed symbols faintly glowing across her collarbone. Natural, not tattoos, alien markings, like those he'd seen carved around the tribe's fire pit. Was she one of them? Or something they feared? He remembered the way the tribe danced, how they didn't seem to celebrate. Their eyes were wide, almost frightened, like they were trying to destroy something they didn't understand. Maybe they thought she was cursed, or maybe she was powerful, and power makes people afraid. A sudden snap from outside the ruin made Jack jump. He reached for a sharp stone beside him, holding it like a dagger. Footsteps, close, soft but heavy. Then a voice, low, guttural, speaking the tribal tongue. Jack pulled the girl into the shadows. Crouching low, a figure passed the crack in the wall painted red. Holding a spear, he stopped, sniffed the air like a predator, then kept walking. Jack waited until the footsteps faded. He exhaled slowly, his grip on the stone loosening. When he looked down, the girl was staring at him, her eyes wide with fear but also wonder. She reached out, touched his cheek, and said something soft and melodic. Then she fell into a deep, peaceful sleep. Jack leaned back against the stone wall, trying to process everything. He had rescued a girl from being cooked alive, was now hiding in ruins while tribal aliens hunted him. And this girl might not just be a victim, she might be something much more. But he couldn't leave her. He couldn't let them take her again. He'd fight if he had to, or run farther. But one thing was now clear in his mind. She wasn't just some alien girl. She was important, and whatever fate she carried, Jack had just stepped into it. The jungle was breathing, alive with shadows and the sound of distant drums. Jack crouched low, holding the silver-skinned girl close to his chest. Her breath was warm against his neck, her skin cool and soft. She hadn't spoken again since falling asleep, but her fingers still clutched the front of his shirt. Even in sleep, she held on to him like he was her only anchor to life. Outside the stone ruins, Jack could hear footsteps, slow and careful, tribal hunters moving through the trees, searching for them. He knew the fire explosion back at the ritual site had given them only minutes. Now they were close again, too. Close, Jack glanced up at the cracked ceiling of the ruin. One shaft of moonlight lit the alien girl's face, making the glowing marks on her collarbone shimmer faintly. She looked otherworldly, more like a spirit than a person, and yet she'd bled, cried, burned just like any human. She wasn't a ghost, she was real, and still in danger. The hunters grunted something to each other, and Jack didn't wait. He shifted the girl carefully onto his back, her arms wrapped loosely around his neck. Then he crept toward the rear of the ruins, where a thick wall of vines had overtaken the stone. Jack pushed through them slowly, silently, and slipped into the cold jungle night once again. The path was almost invisible, twisted and covered in roots. Thorns scratched at Jack's arms and neck, but he kept moving. Every now and then, the girl stirred, whispering in her sleep. He couldn't understand the words, but her voice was soft. Afraid, whatever dream she was having, it wasn't peaceful. The trees grew tighter the deeper he went. Leaves brushed his face, and strange glowing insects danced in the air. The sounds of drums faded for a moment, then returned, louder than before. Jack realized something. The tribe wasn't searching randomly anymore. They were tracking him, maybe by scent, maybe by energy, he didn't know. But they were getting closer, and this time, they weren't going to let her escape alive. Jack slid down a small slope and landed near a shallow stream. He knelt and let the girl sip water from his cupped hand. She opened her eyes slightly, her gaze blurry, lips dry. "I've got you," he whispered, brushing hair from her face. She looked at him like she was trying to remember something, then closed her eyes again. Jack dipped his shirt in the water and used it to cool the burns on her legs. Some were worse than he thought. He needed to find real help, not just hide. He stood up again, then froze. Across the stream, two glowing yellow eyes blinked at him from the trees. A tribal hunter, painted in mud and ash, stepped into the moonlight with a crooked spear. He spotted Jack instantly and roared a deep, guttural call that echoed through the forest. No more hiding. Jack turned and ran, splashing across the stream, pushing branches aside as fast as he could. Behind him, the jungle came alive with growls, whistles, and the pounding of feet. The chase had begun. The girl tightened her grip around Jack's neck. Eyes now fully open, she gasped and pointed upward, toward a mossy rock ledge ahead. Jack didn't question it. He ran toward the ledge, climbed with one hand while holding her with the other. Slipping, grunting, bleeding, but still climbing, they reached the top and ducked into a small cave hidden by hanging vines. The girl pulled at his sleeve, then tapped a glowing mark on her arm. Jack watched as the wall behind them shimmered, then disappeared, revealing a narrow tunnel. She looked at him, her eyes clearer now. She didn't need to speak. He understood. This was their only chance. Jack carried her inside, and the wall behind them slowly reformed, sealing them in. The tunnel was dark but warm, lit only by the pulsing light from her skin. It curved and twisted, deeper into the mountain. Jack's breath was heavy, but he didn't stop. Every step took them farther from the tribe. Every step was a victory, no matter how small. Finally, the tunnel opened into a chamber filled with bioluminescent plants. Strange vines glowed blue and green. Water dripped from the ceiling into a quiet pool. The girl gently climbed off Jack's back and stood on shaky feet. She took a few steps forward and knelt beside the pool, touching the water with her fingers. The moment she did, a soft hum filled the chamber. Jack stared, amazed. She wasn't just hiding. This place was connected to her somehow. The vines responded to her presence, curling and blooming as if recognizing her. She turned to Jack, her voice soft but steady now. "You saved me," she said in broken English. Jack took a step closer. "And now?" he asked. "What happens next?" The girl looked around the glowing chamber, her eyes filled with quiet sadness. "We wake the old ones," she whispered, "before they find us again." The glowing vines shimmered softly on the walls, casting pale blue light across the chamber. Jack stood in silence, his eyes scanning the strange underground world. The alien girl, still weak but stronger than before, knelt beside a pool of glowing water. Her silver fingers dipped gently into the surface, causing the liquid to ripple. In waves of color. Red, then green, then gold, like magic responding to her touch. He didn't know where they were, but it was no normal cave. The walls weren't just rock, they were carved, ancient, with symbols etched into every surface. And those symbols looked like the same glowing marks that lined her collarbone. This place was tied to her. Maybe it had been waiting for her all along. The girl turned slowly, looking at Jack with calm eyes. "You not safe here long," she whispered in broken English. "Tribe come." Jack knelt beside her, wiping sweat from his brow. "I figured that out," he said with a small smile. "What is this place?" She looked up at the ceiling, where soft lights danced like stars. "Old temple," she said slowly, choosing her words with care. "Built before tribe, before war." Jack followed her gaze, seeing the carvings above circles, ships, stars, and tall figures with glowing skin. He glanced at her, realization slowly forming in his mind. "Are you one of them?" The girl hesitated, then nodded. Last," she said softly, her voice full of weight. "Last of line," before Jack could respond. A deep rumble echoed through the chamber. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and dust fell from the ceiling. "Not good," she said quickly, standing up with effort. She moved toward the back of the chamber and touched the wall. Suddenly, a section of stone lit up and slid open, revealing another room beyond. Jack followed her through the passage, alert and ready for anything. The new room was massive, much larger than the first. At the center stood a giant structure shaped like a flower. Its petals closed tightly. Pillars surrounded it, covered in glowing veins and humming with energy. The air felt thick, charged, as if lightning was trapped inside the walls. "What is that?" Jack asked, eyes wide. The girl didn't answer right away. She walked slowly to the flower and placed her palm on one of the closed petals. Her markings began to glow brighter, pulsing with rhythm. "Sleep. Many years," she said. "Time to wake." Suddenly, the flower-like structure began to open, petal by petal. Jack stepped back, shielding his eyes from the light. Inside was a crystal sphere, floating in midair. Spinning slowly, within it, strange symbols shifted like clouds. The chamber filled with sound, a deep hum that made Jack's bones vibrate. The sphere pulsed once, then projected a beam of light onto the floor. An image appeared, an old map of the galaxy. Dotted with fading stars, lines moved, converging onto one world. "This one." The girl pointed at the map, her voice now clearer. "This world. Once home to watchers, to protectors," she said. "Tribe. Turned savage, forgot past, forgot peace." She turned to Jack, eyes glowing softly. "But I remember, and you. You not tribe, not like them." Jack stepped closer, the map reflecting off his face. "I'm just a man who didn't want to see someone die," he said. "But now I think I'm in something much bigger." The ground rumbled again, louder this time. Dust fell from the ceiling, and a crack formed across one of the stone pillars. The girl rushed to the sphere, placing both hands on its surface. A burst of light shot through the room, strong but gentle, making the walls stabilize. "It protect us," she said, breathing hard. "For now." Jack helped her back toward the central chamber. "We can't stay forever," he said. "They'll find another way in." The girl nodded, eyes filled with sadness. "I know," she whispered. "But before we go, I must awaken the gate." She led Jack to a final passage, narrow and cold. At the end was a wall shaped like a doorway, sealed shut, covered in old, cracked carvings. She pressed her palm to it, but nothing happened. She frowned, then looked at Jack. "Need. Bond," she said slowly, touching her chest, then reaching for his hand. Jack didn't move at first. Confused, she looked into his eyes, not with fear but trust. "Your heart. Help mine," she said, placing his hand over one of the glowing symbols on her collarbone. A shock of energy pulsed between them, not painful, but deep. Jack felt heat in his chest. And the wall before them trembled. The carvings began to glow. And slowly, the stone door opened, revealing a glowing tunnel stretching far into the earth. She looked at him and whispered, "Now, we run toward the stars." The tunnel stretched before them, glowing, ancient, and humming with quiet power. Jack held the alien girl's hand as they stepped inside, the warmth of her touch guiding him forward. Each step echoed softly underfoot, the walls pulsing gently. With energy that felt alive, behind them, the chamber began to fade in light, sealing off like it had never been opened. They were alone now, in the depths of something far older than either of them could understand. The girl, still limping from her injuries, walked with purpose. Her silver skin reflected the shifting light as if it knew this place. Jack didn't ask questions, not yet. His mind was still racing from what they'd seen, maps of forgotten. Stars, the flower-shaped relic, the glowing sphere that whispered ancient truth. But they didn't have time to explore more, because up above, the tribe hadn't given up. A loud, bone-shaking roar echoed through the tunnel walls. Jack turned sharply, hand tightening around the small knife in his belt. "They're close," he muttered. The girl nodded, eyes alert. "They follow, always follow," she whispered. "They afraid?" "Of me," Jack frowned. "You saved them once, didn't you?" He asked softly. "Or your kind did." The girl looked away, voice low. "We watched them, loved them, until they forgot." Her fingers brushed the tunnel wall, and symbols lit up under her touch, telling stories only she could read. They feared the stars. "So they burned the sky," she said. "Feared peace. So they chose pain." Tunnels split into two paths ahead, one narrow and dark, the other glowing faintly green. Jack hesitated, but the girl pointed to the narrow one. "Light is bait," she said. "They want us to go there." Jack followed her into the tight corridor, heart thudding louder than his footsteps. The ceiling dipped low, forcing him to crouch. The air smelled strange here, earthy, old, and full of memories. Suddenly, a blast of hot air rushed past them. A trap, flames burst from hidden vents, missing them by inches. Jack pulled the girl close, shielding her with his body. When the fire faded, she looked at him with wide eyes. "You protect," she whispered. Jack grinned. "That's the idea." They kept moving until the tunnel opened into a circular stone room. Torches along the wall lit up one by one, as if sensing their presence. In the center lay a stone table, and above it, carved deep into the ceiling, was the mark Jack had seen on the girl's body, the spiral sun. She stepped forward slowly, brushing her fingers across the surface of the table. "It's a place of oath," she whispered. "Before war. This is where peace was made." Before Jack could reply, a sound filled the chamber. Not a roar, not footsteps, but a voice, low, rumbling, ancient. It came from everywhere and nowhere, speaking in the tribal tongue. The girl's face paled. "What is it?" Jack asked quickly. She turned to him, voice trembling. "Leader of tribe speaks." The voice grew louder, clearer. It spoke through the stones themselves, echoing like thunder trapped underground. Jack couldn't understand the words, but the tone was full of hatred. The girl translated quietly. "He says, give me back or both burn." Jack stood taller. "Tell him no," he said. She looked into his eyes, searching. "You sure?" Jack nodded, dead sure. She raised her hands to the air, symbols glowing brighter now, and shouted in her language. The ground shook gently as if the ruins themselves listened. Then silence, total silence. Jack stepped toward the stone table and placed his hand beside hers. "I don't care what he says," Jack told her. "You're not going back. Not while I'm breathing." Her lips trembled, and for a moment her eyes softened. She reached forward and touched his forehead. Gently. "I remember now," she whispered. "A human once helped my mother before the fall." Just then, the walls of the room began to crack. A low vibration passed through the floor. "Tunnel collapse," the girl said. eyes wide. "They come from below." Jack grabbed her hand again. "Let's find a way out." She nodded, leading him through a smaller passage behind the stone table. But before leaving, she turned back and whispered a word toward the ceiling. A soft glow responded, as if the ruin had heard her goodbye. The next tunnel was colder, steep, and curved upward. Wind flowed through it, fresh and real. "Exit," she said, breathing faster. "Close." As they climbed, a final sound echoed behind them, louder than before. Drums, spears hitting stone. Howls of rage, but Jack didn't turn back. He just squeezed her hand tighter and said, "We're almost free." The tunnel climbed steeply. Twisting like a coiled serpent toward the surface, Jack's legs burned with every step. His breaths came heavy, but he didn't slow down. The girl's hand stayed in his, warm and glowing slightly in the dim light. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit faded, but not completely. The tribe wasn't far. And Jack knew they wouldn't stop until they caught her again. The air was changing, less damp, more crisp. They were getting close to the open sky. After so long in the ancient underground, the thought of fresh air felt like a dream, but Jack stayed alert. The closer they got to freedom, the more dangerous it might become. The girl stumbled on a loose rock, and Jack caught her. She looked up at him, her silver eyes full of gratitude. "You tired?" she whispered. Jack smiled through the sweat on his face. "I've been tired since I saw you hanging above that fire," he replied. "But I'm not stopping." The tunnel opened into a narrow cave mouth, hidden behind thick vines and tangled roots. Moonlight poured in through the leaves, lighting up the girl's face. She stepped forward slowly, as if seeing the sky for the first time. In years, the stars above blinked softly, scattered across the dark blue sky like tiny fires. She raised her hand toward them and whispered something in her native tongue. Jack didn't understand the words, but he felt the meaning: home, memory, hope. They moved quietly through the trees, sticking close to the shadows. Jack scanned the area. They were on a high ridge overlooking the forest. Far below, the jungle stretched endlessly, and in the distance, he saw the faint glow of the tribal fire still burning. The ceremony site, and possibly his way out. There. Jack pointed toward a rocky cliff beyond the trees. "On the other side, I've got a beacon. If we reach it, we can call for help." The girl nodded slowly, but her face grew worried. "Tribe will block the path," she said softly. "They wait, they hunt." Jack thought for a moment, eyes locked on the trail ahead. "Then we don't go around them," he said. "We go above." He led her toward a path that curved along the cliffside, steep and narrow but hidden from below. They climbed carefully, each step dangerous, the edge crumbling under their boots. The wind howled louder the higher they got, threatening to knock them off balance. Jack held her hand tighter, steadying her each time the stones shifted. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, breathing hard. "I strong. Because of you." Halfway up the cliff, they reached a ledge that overlooked the fire pit far below. Jack dropped to his stomach, peeking over the edge. His jaw clenched. The tribe had gathered again, at least 20 of them, surrounding the ritual site. In their center stood a tall figure wearing bones and feathers, likely the chief. He held a spear that crackled with strange energy, and his voice roared in anger. They were waiting for something. No, for someone. They know will come, Jack whispered. The girl joined him, her eyes narrowing as she looked down. "They call it the last flame," she said slowly. "Final offering. To end my bloodline." Jack looked at her. "Then let's not give them what they want." As they continued climbing, something shifted above them. A rock tumbled down the path, bouncing loudly. Jack's heart dropped. He turned, pulling the girl behind a large boulder. Seconds later, dark figures appeared on the ridge. Tribal scouts. They sniffed the air, speaking low, scanning the trail. The girl trembled slightly, but Jack placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "We wait," he whispered. "Don't move." The scouts crept closer, one of them passing just feet from where they hid. Suddenly, The girl's skin glowed faintly, too faint for her to control. The scout paused, sniffing, his yellow eyes narrowing. Jack reached for a sharp stone at his belt, preparing for the worst. Then howl from below. Loud and urgent, the scouts turned and rushed back down the trail, drawn by the signal. Jack exhaled in relief. That was close. They finally reached the cliff's top as dawn began to break. The first light of morning painted the sky in soft orange and gold. Ahead stood a metal box, hidden in tall grass. Jack's emergency beacon. He ran to it, opened the panel, and powered it up. A green light blinked rapidly, then turned solid. "Signal sent," he said. "They'll come." The girl stepped beside him, the sunlight touching her silver skin for the first time fully. Her glow faded, replaced by soft warmth. "You did it," she said, smiling weakly. "You bring light back." Jack looked at her, heart pounding, not from fear anymore, but something deeper. "You're not alone now," he said quietly. "We'll make sure no one burns ever again." But as they turned to rest, a shadow moved in the trees behind them. The tribe had one last move to make, and the fight wasn't over yet. The morning sun rose slowly over the jungle, bathing the cliff in golden light. Birds called from distant trees, unaware of the danger gathering in the shadows. Jack stood near the beacon, eyes scanning the tree line. The girl stood beside him, her silver skin glowing faintly under the new sun. But both of them felt it. They were not alone. A rustle of leaves, a soft snap of a twig. Jack turned quickly, gripping a sharp stick in one hand like a spear. From the trees, the tribal warriors emerged, silent and ready, dozens of them, painted in blood and ash, surrounding the cliff like wolves. In front of them stood the chief, taller than the rest, his face hidden behind a skull mask. He raised a staff wrapped in bones, and the ground seemed to shudder beneath their feet. The girl stepped forward, her expression calm but fierce. "No more," she said firmly. "I am not yours." The chief slammed his staff down and shouted something in their guttural language. The girl didn't flinch. Jack stepped beside her, keeping his voice low. "You sure we can't run?" She shook her head slowly. "If we run, they chase forever." Jack nodded, understanding. "Then we stand." The tribe began to chant, slow, rhythmic, terrifying. They circled the two like predators preparing for the kill. The girl lifted her hands, and the glowing marks on her skin brightened. Blue light shimmered around her body, forming a thin shield of energy. Jack didn't understand how it worked, but he knew one thing. She wasn't helpless anymore. The first warrior charged forward, screaming. Jack moved fast, stepping in front of the girl and swinging his makeshift spear. The tip struck the attacker's arm, knocking him back. Two more came from the side, but the girl raised her hand, and a blast of blue light sent them flying. More came, more screams, more dust rising from the ground. But Jack and the girl fought, side by side, one with raw strength and human will, the other with ancient power flowing through her veins. Jack got hit a sharp club to the ribs, but he stayed on his feet. Blood ran down his arm, but he didn't stop. He turned, saw the girl collapse to one knee, drained from using her energy. Three warriors rushed toward her with spears. Jack didn't think, he just ran. He tackled one, knocked another off the ledge. The third slashed across his back, but before he could strike again, the girl screamed. Her body erupted in pure light. Blinding and fierce, a wave of energy surged out. In every direction, the warriors were thrown back like leaves in the wind. Even the chief staggered, his mask cracking down the middle. The chanting stopped. Silence filled the air, broken only by Jack's heavy breathing. He dropped to his knees beside the girl. Her eyes were open, but her glow was fading. "I protect," she whispered. Jack held her hand tightly. "No," he said. "We protect each other." The chief rose again, furious, his staff crackling with strange red energy. He raised it high, but a loud sound filled the air, cutting through the silence, a deep whirring like engines. Everyone looked up. A ship appeared above the trees, descending quickly, silver and black. With earth markings, the rescue team. Jack waved with one arm, supporting the girl with the other. The tribe froze, unsure. The chief hesitated, then turned and vanished into the trees. The others followed, like shadows retreating with the night. The ship landed, and medics rushed out. They lifted Jack and the girl onto stretchers, checking wounds, hooking up 4 lines. She looked at Jack one more time before her eyes closed. He whispered, "You're safe now, I promise." Weeks later, Jack sat beside a hospital bed aboard the orbiting station. The girl, now wearing a soft white robe, rested peacefully. Her body healed slowly, but her strength was returning. She opened her eyes and smiled faintly. "You stayed," she said. Jack grinned. "Of course I did." She sat up, looking out the window at the stars. "So much." "Sky," she whispered. Jack handed her a tablet, showing her photos of other worlds, other species. "You're free now," he said. "You can go anywhere." She looked at him quietly, then reached for his hand. "Not alone," she said. Jack nodded. "Not anymore." They sat together, watching the stars. 2 survivors, 2 souls from different worlds, who found something stronger than fear, something brighter than fire, hope.